Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to all you need to know about airbrushes. Now I'm going to talk you through my airbrush collection. On the ones that I'd recommend, I'll talk to you about how they perform, the needle and nozzle setups, what to look out for with these, as some of these can be fiddly. Tweaks that you can do to these brushes that I've done to these brushes and it's made them better. So I'll run through the brands I've got here on the table. We've got a H&S brand, we've got the Creos, Iwata, and we've got Badger, and we've got a cheap brand as well. So we'll start off with Creos. Now Creos airbrushes have been out for quite some time and they're getting really popular in the airbrush industry because they're coming up at reasonable prices and you are getting a good quality brush. So if you are on the market for a Creos, highly recommend them, guys. They are brilliant brushes. I own two to date. I did own another one. I'll talk through the ones that I've got, why I'd recommend them, what they're used for when you come to custom painting. So the first Creos that I picked up was a detail brush, and it is the PS290. I'll pop a picture up on the screen now. So this is the brush, and as you can see on the back of the brush, I've done sort of like an alteration to it. So this is my PS290S. The original brush would come with the rear body like this, but I took the rear body off, had a drop sleeve put in here in chrome, and then adapted a column piece to the back, which makes this brush more sensitive in the trigger response. So when your hand's on the trigger like this, you get feedback with the needle moving backwards on this sleeve here with contact to your skin. So it just gives you that little bit more control in the trigger movement as you move forward and backwards on the trigger. Now the original brush with this back piece on is absolutely fine, works great. But I was tweaking this and thought, no, this gives it a little bit more feed to the brush, makes it sort of a little bit smaller in your hand when you use it. You get a Mac valve to the front on these, which work really well on the Creos ranges, guys. These are basically Iwatas that come out of the Iwata factory, but have been brought out for the general public as a cheaper brush, but you're getting the same build quality as Iwata. Brilliant trigger response on the triggers. You'll see in some of the Creoses as well, you'll have a slant trigger to the front on some of them like the PS290, and some sit flatter like on the one in the picture now, which is the 771. Now I did own the detailed 771. It is another brilliant brush for detail. It looks very similar to the custom Micron front end on the custom Micron, which I'll show you in a bit. But the 270 is well worth a look if you are after a detail brush. Comes in with a 0.2 double action trigger, top cup airbrush, Mac valve to the bottom, nice chrome body, robust. It'll withstand solvents, your normal acrylics and things like that. They're easy to clean, a good all-round solid brush, guys. So that's the PS290 by Creos. So that's that one. We're going to move on to another Creos that I picked up and has been an absolute godsend to me for custom painting, and I'll tell you the reasons why. It's the PS290. So this one is a bigger needle and nozzle setup compared to the 270. So you're looking for a lot wider spray patterns and getting more coverage down. The bonuses with this brush, you get a little trigger to the finger, so it feels like you're holding like a miniature spray gun with the trigger to the front. Quite a big cup to the top, so you get quite a bit of painting. You can buy bigger cups for these, so it gives you more room for paint, so you can get them, they are available. You've got an adjuster to the back to dial the distance of how much throw you get in your trigger to how much paint gets released. It's a 0.5mm needle and nozzle setup, so thicker body paints will tend to go through this brush a lot easier. If you're using primers and clear coats, just thin it down to the right consistency and this brush sprays them with no dramas. You get two caps with this. As you see in that picture, you get two caps. You undo the sleeve to the front, that just unscrews like that. You slide your cap off and you can change between a spot cap and a fan cap. Now the spot cap is basically how your airbrush, standard airbrush caps will spray. They will give you a dot pattern, and then when you back off and move back with the trigger, you get that wide dot in spray pattern. this will put down a dot spray pattern around when you back off 3 to 4 inches, and it will start to mist out as you spray and pull back. The fan cap is really nice. That's my sort of go-to cap with this brush. It will put you down like a 3-inch fan pattern, nice and clean, nice atomized overspray. So a good all-round brush if you're looking at putting some extra paint down, you want to get a bit of coverage, or you want to do clear coating or primering models, smaller things. They are brilliant brushes, guys, robust. I've had no dramas with this in the time that I've used it. So that's the PS290X by Creos, one to look out for. Moving on to a all-rounder sort of a brush that will cope with sort of thicker paints, get your great detail down. A comfortable solid brush is the Iwata HPC Plus. Now this one is on a 0.3, so this is why I'm saying it's a little bit more forgiving with your paints. If you're new to airbrushing and you're not used to dialing in your paints, you can usually go straight out the bottle with these brushes because they're a bigger needle and nozzle, and you just tend to be able to spray it a lot easier. To the back of the brush on these, you get the same dialing like you do on the PS290. This dials your trigger in to move backwards and forwards. You'll find with Iwata airbrushes as well, all the triggers are on point when it comes to feedback in the trigger for your paint. You will find that you just touch the trigger on an Iwata and the paint is instantly there. Atomization on Iwatas as well is really good. I find with all the Iwatas that I own, the atomization is really cool. You get a cup to the top, which is good because you can pop the cups off. These ones always tend to be a bit tight on these, I've found, but will loosen up after time. So you get your cup to the top, which saves you paint. Double action airbrush, nice feel control in the brush, comfortable as well because you get a scallop here. Got your crown cap to the front that you can take off for tip dry. You've got a nice bit of exposure on the needle. So it's a good solid brush, guys. I've used this recently on the channel and it's been really nice to work with because, as I say, you can just chuck your paint in it and go. You're not fiddling around thinning your paint down to get it to flow right. It's a good all-round brush. So that's the Iwata HPC Plus on a 0.3. We're going to move on to a Harder & Steenbeck brush that I'd recommend and I've owned for quite some time, and it's the Evolution range. If you're looking at Harder & Steenbeck and you're just coming into buying one and you've not got the sort of funds for the higher end sort of Infinity, start off with the Evolution range on the CR Plus. Go for the CR Plus in any of the H&S range because the other ones that aren't the CR Plus are the older bodies. Now the bodies on the older ones tend to get a bit tarnished. It takes years to get it tarnished, but if you want one that's going to last longer on the body and look nice and chrome finish permanently, go for the CR Plus. Now this was an old body on this Evolution that I've got, and this one has been tweaked and customized as well. So this one's had a electroplated dip, so it's like a rainbow color now on this one. This is one of my oldest brushes and it works perfect. So that's why I say H&S are good brushes, guys, for lasting on parts and things like that. You don't really get many dramas with the H&S. The good things with H&S as well is they're easy to strip down and clean. It'll be the easiest brush out of all these to strip down and clean. That's why they're a brilliant beginner's brush, because they're like Lego. It's nice and simple just to put back together. The pieces are sort of like chunky in a way, and you just fit them all together, and it's very, very easy to do. So this brush itself, which is the Evolution Silverline Solo, this came in a 2-in-1. You can buy H&S brushes in 2-in-1 box sets. They come up a little bit dearer, but the bonus with the 2-in-1 kit in the box, you will get 2 cups. You get a smaller cup and you get a bigger cup because these just unscrew, which is another bonus. So you can use the brush like this with like the micro type cup on. So you can just put a couple of drops of paint in, or you can screw the next cup on, which is this one. I think this is like a 2 ml cup, that one, or it's the 5, and then you get the bigger cup you can screw on as well. This one has had some tweaks, as the original Evolution Silverline Solo had a different crown cap, so I've uprated this to act and feel like an infinity. So I've got the 0.15 set up needle and nozzle out the infinity with the prong cap on this, and I've also adapted Teflon washers to the trigger response. Now there is a video on the channel to make your H&S more responsive in the trigger, because there was a lot of comments and I had the same sort of feedback with the triggers on these. Felt like there was a little bit of delay in the trigger. So I stripped it down, sorted the trigger response out, and I've got these brushes now on the H&S absolutely on point for trigger response. So that is on the channel, guys, the hack that I've done that you can use across from your Evolution. You can use it on the Infinity to get your trigger response better. So Evolution Silverline Solo, one to look out for. It's a nice brush, but this is the older one, so it's the older body. But if you're looking at getting an Evolution, look for the CR Plus. You can get these in 0.2, you can get them in 0.15, which is real small detail. If you go for the 0.15, you've really got to start looking at dialing in your paints. And this is why a good detail brush like that, you're going to be coming down on air pressures, and you've got to dial your paints in because it's a very small needle and nozzle. They can get frustrating if you're just trying to chuck neat acrylics down their neck. They don't like it. You've got to get your paint consistency right, but when you do, the brushes perform amazing on detail. So that's the H&S Silverline Solo. We'll move over to another Iwata, and it's going to be a bottom feed. Now if you're looking at a bottom feed airbrush because you've seen t-shirt artists or you've seen people doing big wall art and they're blasting paint out, a great brush by Iwata is the Eclipse, and it is the HP-BCS on a 0.5mm. So you get a bottom feed. So these jars clip to the bottom of the brush like this. Bonus with these brushes, they're quick on colour changes. You would have a load of bottles with different colours. You can blast, hold the jar at the bottom and steady your hand as you're painting, and you can just pull these out and connect your next bottle of colour. Now this brush was the first Iwata that I brought, and as you can see, it's in really good condition. No dramas whatsoever with this brush. Easy to clean. You can just hold your brush up, pour thinners in here with a brush, push through, blast air through. Very quick and easy, robust. This one has been dropped on the floor many times with the crown cap off, and I find the needles are bulletproof on these because you've got a bigger needle. They're a lot stronger. You've got a cutaway to the back that you undo to get to your body like this. You can adjust the tension on your trigger to make it softer or stiffer for feedback in the trigger. Chuck to the back, just a simple, robust brush, but they last. This is well over 12 years old and he's still going strong. So that's the Iwata HP-BCS 0.5mm bottom feed. Another one to look out for, guys, you can also get the Neo range where you get similar sort of looking brush, basically identical. You get the Neo version, come up a little bit cheaper. So one to look out for if you're after a bottom feed. Now we'll move over to a detail brush, and it's going to be a Badger, and it's the Sotar Slim. I've just sort of picked this brush up. So this one is new to my detail range. First Badger that I owned, and I brought this on the back of reviews from other channels because they were saying the Badger Sotar is a really good brush, and it is, guys. It is an amazing brush. It really is. For detail on a 0.2 and how the brush flows with paint, you find the brush is very sort of open. When you clip the air in, press down on the air, it just tends to flow the air out. It sounds very like a jet. It sounds very forceful to the front, but when you spray with it and drop the pressure down and dial your paints in with this brush, it is incredible because the trigger on these, the responsiveness in the trigger is absolutely on point. This one feels, apart from one that I'm going to show you in a minute, the trigger response on this would probably be the best that I've got on the table, apart from a couple of others I'm going to talk for you in a minute. But the Sotar, after owning it for a couple of months and using this on the channel on projects, it's a cracking brush to get on with. Really comfortable because you've got your scallop here where your finger sits. You've got full view around your brush, So you've got no jar at the bottom that's getting in the way, you've not got no side cup on a brush getting in the way, and you've not got a top cup in the way. All you've got on these brushes is a little tiny scallop there to the top. Another bonus with the little scallop tops is you tend to save your paint. It slows you down airbrushing because you put a couple of drops in the scallop, so it cuts your spray time down. So this is another reason why I find you don't get much tip dry with this brush, because you're not putting loads of paint in the top of the cup. So you paint in for say 5 minutes and then you're refilling. When you use big cup airbrushes like this without the caps, you tend to overfill them. It's very rare you're filling in one full solid colour and permanently using that one colour, unless you're doing a grayscale, say portrait, it's just one colour, or just like a black portrait that you're doing with one colour in. But you tend to waste a lot of paint when using these ones, especially because you overfill it, you want a quick colour change, you're chucking that paint away and filling it again, and beginners always tend to overfill. So you go through your paint, I find as a beginner, a lot quicker with bigger cup airbrushes, and I found this one saved my paint dramatically because you're using a lot less and you're painting for a lot less time. So that's the Sotar 0.2. You've got your adjuster to the back, you've got a needle pinch thing here where you can undo the chuck, slide the needles out, easy brush to get on with. The only thing you will find with these, what I've found, is on the seals to the front when you screw the top head assembly in, you will get a little bit of leakage here. It's next to nothing. You very rarely puts you off when you're painting. If you were to spray, push air through and then lick your finger and wet around the front, you'll just see a little bubble build up. But to cure that, you can get beeswax, drop it on the thread, tighten it back up, and that will solve that little leakage. It's just like a machining fault that they have on them, but the brushes work brilliantly. So that's the Sotar Slim 2020. Brilliant brush, guys, one to look out for at a good price point as well. So a good responsive airbrush. Now we'll move on to Rich Pen. Now Rich Pen have brought out a lot of brushes, but they're sort of hard to come by now. You won't sort of see these stocked in like airbrush sort of stores. Rich Pen, you have to go to main sort of dealer to get hold of one. But I picked this one up quite some time ago now, and it is the Rich Pen 112A Apollo. Now this is a 0.2 and it's similar looking to the Sotar with the scallop to the top where you put minimal paint in. Now out of the two brushes from the Sotar to this, the Sotar and the 0.2 flows a lot easier. I find you've just got to dial your paint in and get it tweaked for this brush, but once you get your paint consistency right for the Rich Pen, it works just as good as the Sotar and puts down the detail just like the Sotar. Responsive trigger, yes. Feels like an Iwata in your hand, which they're all coming from the same sort of company and like origin, these brushes with the Iwata and the Rich Pen. A good solid brush, very light in your hand, really feels like you've got a pen in your hand because you've got no cup, bottom feed. It's very sleek, very light, so a nice comfortable brush to get on with. That's the Rich Pen 112A. Moving on to side feed airbrushes. Now if you've seen all these artists on YouTube and you always see them with like an Iwata custom Micron or a Takumi in the hand, they're all going for side feed, so you think, well, I must get a side feed because all these other people use side feeds. Me personally, I prefer top cup airbrushes. They seem a little less fiddly than a side feed. You tend to get, I'd say you get better flow with a top cup because your paint is instantly flowing down straight into the brush and out, and that's how big spray guns work as well. They sort of paint flows straight out to the front. All the scallop ones, it's just instantly in the reservoir there and it is going that direction straight in. Side feeds, they're very clever how they've done them. When you look at the custom Micron, what we've got next, the actual air, the feed of paint sort of goes, it's very weird. When you look inside these cups, you've got no you've got a hole here in the side of the cup, but then when you look inside here and undo the actual cup itself, like this, you've got a hole through there where your paint would go into the cup, and then there's a little hole in the side of the body here, and it draws like a vacuum and draws the paint up inside the actual body of the cup and pushes the paint through here. So it sort of pushes the paint down, goes up and out when you press down for air. So a very well designed cup, I find, with the custom Micron cups, the smaller cups. You get a little gauze, which I've just dropped. You get a little gauze there that sits and acts like a filter when you screw the bottom on there. So a very clever designed side feed. Custom Micron has been around for a long time. These ones, this is the CM SB custom Micron. This is the V2 version, so it's got the flatter, wider trigger. The triggers on these are incredible, guys. So if you're thinking custom Micron and you want the sort of ultimate detail brush, expensive, but these brushes last. No dramas with this brush whatsoever. In 5 to 6 years of owning it, not had to change any parts. Can be fiddly when it comes to paint because you've got a 0.18 needle and nozzle setup in these cups. Now, once you get your paints dialed in at the right consistency with these, they spray flawless. The atomization is really good, and they're very quiet in your hand when you paint with them, and you don't feel loads of air pressure coming out the front of the brush. They're very soft, so they put the paint down precisionally where you need it. You just touch the trigger and you can just puff in tiny bits of paint because the atomization is really good. So a brilliant solid brush by Iwata. It's the custom Micron, the CM SB V2 on a 0.18 if you can still get one. So that's a side feed. We can move on to another detail brush, and we're moving back over to H&S. Now, I've got the Infinitec, which has been around for quite some time now, and H&S brought two versions of the Infinity out. So you had the older version with the body, like I said, on the Evolution Solo, where the coatings wasn't very good. It would like tarnish after years. The insides of the cups would tarnish, and insides of the bodies of the brush, if you're using solvents, they just sort of weather away after years of use. It does take a long time to wear them away. So if you have got one of the old ones and you start seeing it tarnishing inside, don't panic. It doesn't change the performance of the brush. You just get a discoloration inside the cup, but the actual bodies will last. They just sort of weather away after years. So I've got another Infinity here, which is my custom Infinitec, which I've done tweaks to. Now, the tweaks that I've done on this, which make it an absolutely incredible detail brush, is, as you can see, we've got a different body to the back. You've usually got your red body, the anodized red aluminium body to the back. Now, I've sanded all this down and highly polished all the back, so it looks near on chrome to match the body. So it's the same standard Infinity body to the back, but just highly polished. Trigger top is different, so I've made my own trigger top, which is flatter and wider, which is a lot more comfortable in when you put your finger on than the little small trigger you get with the H&S. You just get a lot more feel on your finger on the trigger. The needle and nozzle setup in this, now this is the 0.15, so it's the detail needle, and it is the V2 needle, but the old brass 0.15 nozzle. So the taper on the V2 needle are a lot sort of slimmer, which makes the needle on this one protrude out the brush more, and I find you get a lot finer point detail with more exposure coming out the front of the brush. So that combo with the 0.15 V2 needle and the old school 0.15 nozzle makes a brilliant detail brush, guys. It really does. I've done the hack to this with the Teflon washers. This has had a double Teflon washer put on it, and it has made the trigger response absolutely on point. So this is my go-to for full-on detail airbrush, I find this one will put down the best detail out of all of these, even the custom Micron, because it is a very small needle and nozzle setup, so you get that real soft, fine atomization like you do with the Micron. But I just prefer a top cup airbrush because you get better flow rate with your paints. So that's the Infinitec one to look out for. If you do get one and you're finding you're getting trigger delay, have a look at the hack. Drop the Teflon washers on. The Teflon washers that I use are the ones that go over the nozzles to the front. When you take your nozzle out, you get a little white Teflon washer. You can adapt them and push them on the back. You'll see it in the video, but it makes the trigger response on the H&Ss loads better. So that's the Infinitec. We'll move back over to Iwata, and it's another side feed. Now, this one is the Takumi Eclipse. Now, this is like their sort of updated range on brushes, because you have the custom Micron, you can get the custom Takumi Micron, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But this one is the Eclipse. Now, the Eclipse has been around for ages because you've got the Eclipse bottom feed, you get the Eclipse like top cup, which have been brilliant brushes. That sort of range of the Eclipses, there's quite a few. They've all been really good brushes. Now they brought the side feed. Now the other side feed that the Eclipse was the SBS, and it had that cup to the side, which was a brilliant brush on a 0.35. Then they brought out the Takumi Eclipse, which is a 0.35 again. The changes they've done to this are you get a bigger cup to the side, which is different to the cups on the side here, where the paint goes inside the body of the cup here and goes up and comes into the brush. They've changed it, so basically you're getting a top feed version cup like you would say on that one, but they've put it to the side, so your paint flows straight down and then comes into the brush to the side that way. Yes, it's a better flow coming into the brush, but these cups are way too big for this brush, and they are a heavy cup with the cap to the top. You will find when you hold it in your hand, it tends to drop, it sort of goes lopsided, sort of wants to sit like that. You can feel the weight in the cup when you hold it, it just tends to move over. So I find putting one of the original Iwata cups on to the side works really well, or unscrew the actual Takumi cup like that, and then you can fit the small Neo cup, which looks very similar to the cup you get on the H&S. These screw straight into the side, and you can use like the H&S or the Neo cup, so it makes it a lot more sort of user friendly. Doesn't feel so weighty one-sided, gives you a little bit more view. You can move these cups to the opposite side. You take the pin out and you can move that across to the side. Other good points about the Takumi, what they've done is they've shortened the front end of the brush here, so it makes you feel closer. Now they're trying to move you closer to your work, which I can see why, so it just makes you go up more and more and more closer for your detail. Now with doing that, bringing you sort of closer, when you're working you can get right in sort of close and you're right up to your detail work. It's nice, but if you've got big hands with a small brush like this and being moved up closer, you can feel sort of scrunched up in the hand coming in if you've got big meaty meat cleaver hands. A good thing about these is the trigger. They've brought the custom Micron sort of flat trigger over to the Eclipse Takumi, so it makes it a really comfortable trigger. The angle on the trigger, the grip to the top, and the feedback in these triggers is the best on trigger for comfort. They really are. So that's the Eclipse Takumi on a 0.35. One to look out for. Prices on these, I think they're around, you can get these for around 160, 170. You are getting a solid brush for that price that will last. Adjuster to the back for your trigger to dial it in. Side feed 0.35. Crown cap, nice needle exposure to the front, so if you get your tip dry, you can clean. Good with sort of semi-thicker paints, right down to thinning this out. This brush gets seriously down on detail, so that's a Takumi Eclipse, a good one to look out for if you're after an Iwata. So that's another side feed. We'll move on to another side feed because I do own a few. It's another Iwata, and this one is the HP Plus. Now this is a 0.2. We've just looked at the Takumi. Now when you look at the Takumi back of the body is that, and you get the same body to the back with the HP Plus. It's exactly the same rear body to that. It's just a different front end on the brush, different trigger, different front end, but you're getting the same sort of cup to the side. You can take this cup out and you could put the Takumi cup onto this one, not a problem. Different trigger, nice trigger on this. These are sort of more flat to the top. There's not much tilt on these, so you sit sort of very flat on the top. Very responsive trigger on these. Dial to the back again. 0.2, so it gets really nice down on detail, and I like this piece on the body here. That just makes it a little bit more comfortable when you've got your hand on it. It makes you point with your hand more like you are pointing down with a pen, so you can hold the cup to the side, really steady yourself when you're going in on detail. So a real nice brush. Again, no dramas with this brush after owning it for 5-6 years. Solvents through it, not a problem, because all your sort of Iwata range are solvent resistant, like washers and things to the front end, so you've got no dramas with solvent. So that's another good one to look out for. Detail brilliant on a 0.2 is the HP Plus on the 0.2. So that's gone through these brushes on side feed, bottom feed, top cup. We've got a budget one next. Now this one, I would say, is sort of one to look out for. I mean, there's so many varieties and copies of this brush on the market. They all come up on different names because they're mass-produced Chinese copies. But this one is the fine spray, and I think this is the AB100, I think, something like that. I'll pop it up in the screen now. This is a 0.2. And I got this sent out from a company because it's one of their best sellers. Now I can see why, for a beginner, for the price on this brush, it's the cheapest one on the table. These are coming in at around, at the time these were £20, they've gone down to about £16. So you're getting an airbrush for £16. Now, build quality on these, they're not bad. You've got your adjuster here to dial your trigger tension in. They can just feel a bit not as precise as an Iwata. They just feel a little bit grainy when you're screwing them together. You can hear the triggers. They don't sound great, but they spray. Now, the reason why I recommend one is, for a beginner, you're blasting paint out, you're trying all sorts, you're chucking artist acrylic through it, you're blasting everything through it just to give it a go, and they're good for that. They're also good for putting down paint on backgrounds, or say you're working on something where you need to drop quite a bit of paint down. You can just throw paint in these, blast it through, it gets the job done. Quick clean out with your cleaners and stick it on your shelf. It wouldn't be, for me, a go-to detail brush for going in and working 5-6 hours on a portrait with, because I couldn't cope doing it with this brush. It's just too much hard work in the trigger response. You are really having to think about what you're doing when you pick one of these brushes up, and you've got to have good trigger control when you use a cheaper brush, because the trigger response in these are poor. So you're trying to find that spot where you're getting the paint. When you pick up a decent brush and you're good on trigger control, you can just make these things dance around the paper. You know exactly where you're going and what paint consistency to mix them to. So cheap brushes, beginner, yes. A great detail brush, anything from any of the Iwatas on a 0.2 up to 0.3, brilliant. H&S is brilliant for detail, coverage. You get the wide range in the H&S, so you can get a bottom feed H&S, top cuts, you can get side feeds, but they're brilliant on stripping down and putting back together on parts. They're just nice and easy. And I find out of these brushes, if you're coming across as a beginner, I would really steer towards H&S out of all of these brands. Not saying that these other brands aren't as good, they are. Hands down, they're all matching on build quality, how they spray, price sort of points, they're all sort of varied. But for ease of use for a beginner, I recommend H&S because they are easy to strip down, and I think that's what you need when you're moving into this as a beginner. You need something easy to strip down and put back together, because some of these higher price point ones like these, you just got to be a little bit more careful with them, because you've got a very expensive airbrush in your hand, which is very expensive to change these front ends and buy separately. They're very expensive and you need little spanners to undo things. But with the H&S, they're just, as I say, they're like Lego. You can just unscrew, you can take the nozzle out because it's floating like that, and you can just slide that nozzle in, put it on the front of your brush, and you just nip it up. It's sort of easy. It's very, very easy. Even the Infinity, they're just easy. The triggers come out nice and easy. Other ones, you're fiddling with pins, trying to drop the pin in. Just a little bit more time consuming. So H&S for me, beginner, even up to advanced, brilliant brushes. They're all good on the table, guys. They have all worked for me. They've all got their sweet spots when it comes to me for custom painting. Brilliant range of brushes. So I just wanted to share that with you on the brushes I've got. If you're looking at any of these brushes, all recommended. I'll leave some links in the description to where you can get these brushes from if you wanted to purchase one at some good prices. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.